Good morning. Assalamu alaikum. How are you? I hope you are doing well. Today we will continue discussing the issue of ethics and social responsibility. So, at the start of this chapter, we gave an example about General Electric and about its eco-imagination policy regarding being environmental friendly. So, at the global level, multinational usually they care about their ethical behavior and how they could be socially responsible in the location that they are operating in. Business ethics emerged in the 1960s of the 20th century, mostly at the wake of the social responsibility movement at that time. So why do multinational corporations care about their ethical behavior? For two reasons. Because being ethical, wherever they are, this will give them competitive advantage. Moreover, they avoid being perceived irresponsible from the countries and the societies that they are operating in. So for these two reasons, they care so that they can have good reputation wherever they are and they can assist their organization in achieving its objectives. Cultural differences between and among countries is inevitable. Why? Because they have different values, different customs, and so on. So, if we look at the ethical behavior itself, what we can consider as unique specification for a certain country, or do we have an ethical behavior which is acceptable all over the world? We have 2 points of view. The first one is called cultural relativism. The other one is cultural normativism. What do we mean by relativism? Here we mean that each country is different from the other because they have certain values, certain customs to rely on, and based on these values, the ethical behavior will be judged and will be maintained by the people in this country. So, when a multinational corporation is working in a certain society, they should know that these people, they have their own values, and which means that this company, they should respect those values, and they should they need to adapt to these values of the country that they are operating in. The other point of view is cultural normativism. This means that I will not look at ethical behavior as unique in a certain culture. I will consider what is being acceptable at the global level, which means that we have universal standards of behavior which all cultures all over the world they should follow. Okay, upon this argument, what we can consider a suitable behavior in a certain culture, how we can measure the behavior of individuals in the society and inside the organization that are being operating in this society. So we need to find justification for a certain behavior in a certain situation. The first justification is based on the cultural values that is being based on either the values of the country or being universal values, which is mostly multinational corporations. They depend on the universal values that are acceptable everywhere all over the world. Moreover, legal principles, the law. We have specific law of the country and we have global law. So what is acceptable and what is being legal as a certain behavior is being the ethical behavior of the individuals is being legally acceptable or illegally unacceptable. Okay, so you need to obey the law at the minimum level of your ethical conduct, which is enforced by the society and which include legal aspects of the law of the country. However, there are people who might argue that the law is not enough to force the ethical behavior or ethical conduct of individuals. They set certain arguments, certain points, which are based on. The first one is that not all unethical behaviors, they are illegal. So, as an example, lying is not illegal, although we know it's unethical, such as you lie to your boss to get a day off work at that day. But lying is illegal as long as you lie under oath, so it becomes illegal. But in our usual life, people, they lie all the time. Moreover, the laws, they are slow in developing, which means that you need to pass it, to reach passing the law, you need to develop it first, to accept it, and then you pass it to the court so that they will accept it and put it into force. Moreover, most of the laws, they are not based on unclear, they are based on unclear moral concepts, which means that you might explain those concepts in different manners. The law, usually, it needs a long time to be examined by the court and to be accepted and enforced by the court. Moreover, the law is not efficient in achieving behavior at a low cost, which means it's not possible to solve every ethical problem with a certain law. So it's not possible to judge every behavior that is being based or set on certain law to be known as or to be defined as this is unethical behavior. However, there are those people or those judges who say that the law is good and we can reckon at the law to enforce the ethical behavior because the law embodies many of the country moral principles and it is based on the values of the people and the customs of the people. Moreover, the law provides clearly defined rules. So, as long as these rules, they are defined in a certain manner, so we can judge unethical behavior based on these rules. The law is, the law enforces usually the rules that apply to everyone. There is no discrimination between people. So, nobody is above the law, as they say. So you should abide by the law when anything that you are doing or any action that you will be behaving in any manner. Moreover, the law reflects careful and wide-ranging discussion among those who are responsible, and mostly those they are the people who are specialized in law and in legal matters. So it should be based on consensus among those people so that people will not argue that the law is not foreseeable and we don't want to abide by the law. However, we have something which is called extraterritoriality. What does this mean? This means that, suppose that there is a strong country in the world, let us take the United States for instance. Usually if they want to force their application of laws to the foreign countries that they are operating and or to force their law on the foreign operations of their domestic firms in other countries, this means that we want to force our laws wherever we are operating. However, most of the countries, they object that. They don't allow those countries to force their laws upon them. But they might agree on certain principles concerning health and safety, for instance, of labor. And in other instances, home and host country laws clearly they conflict, which means that which one we will abide by, the home country or the host country laws that they will force the company to work on certain principles and certain rules. it comes to our mind something is very important and nowadays is a hot topic everywhere all over the world, which is the topic of corruption. Corruption usually is connected with bribery. Corruption means, as Transparency International, which is a international organization, they define corruption as the misuse of entrusted power for private gain, which means that powerful people usually they use their power or their authority to gain private things or something which is good for them, not for the country itself or for the people in general. How they can facilitate this matter? Through bribes. They bribe other parties or other people in order to facilitate their operations in certain country or certain society, which makes it possible for them to gain some profits or some possessions. So, bribes means I would pay certain officials who can sometimes forget about applying the rules and applying the laws of the country as long as they are being paid some amount of money. Usually bribes occur to obtain government contracts, because this brings a lot of profit, or get public officials to do whatever I want them to do as long as I am paying them. So this is unethical behavior and this is unacceptable in the global law. How we can limit corruption and bribery at the global level? There are so many efforts which have been launched by multinational organizations, United Nations organization, NGOs, and so on, to limit corruption and limit bribery anywhere in the world, at the international, regional, and even at the industry level itself. At the international level, we have the OECD Anti-Bribery Convention in 1997, the ICC, and the UN Convention Against Corruption. At the regional level, we have the European Union efforts. We have the US Foreign Corruption Act, which came after the Sarbanes-Oxley Act legislation, which was launched in 2002 after the Enron company collapse, and it was a scandal. At the industry initiative, we have the World Economic Forum. Usually they issued in 2005 Zero Tolerance Pact, and each year the World Economic Forum, they follow up on corruption level at the global level and set a list of countries who are the most corrupt behaviors that are available in certain countries per se. Here we would stress the topic of environment, as we started with the General Electric global company, of course, and they showed that they care about the environment by setting certain standards of being environment friendly under the strategy of eco-imagination, as we said at the beginning of this chapter. How companies or multinational corporations, they are being accused of corrupting or damaging the environment in two ways. The first one is the removal of resources, some of which they are renewable and some of which they are not renewable. For instance, cutting trees, forest damage, is considered as damage to the environment. Although they are renewable, they will grow up again, but they take a long time to come again. Pollution of the environment, usually by certain production processes and the use of polluting causing products, especially chemicals, this will cause pollution to the environment and will harm the people and everyone in the same country that the company they are operating. Here we consider being eco-friendly, being environment-friendly, will bring us to the topic of sustainability. Sustainability is a hot topic nowadays and is considered very important for the people and the environment itself. What do we mean by sustainability? Sustainability means meeting the needs of the present without compromising the future generation, so that they can live in a clean environment and under certain rules which are sustainable, and they are applicable everywhere all over the world for their own benefit. Here, so many people, they are very concerned about pharmaceutical company and pharmaceutical industry ethical conduct. What kind of conduct that the pharmaceutical or pharma industry they usually they are following? The first one is tiered pricing, which means that they issue or they charge price for products sold in the Western world, in industrialized countries, and reduced prices in developing countries, which means that maybe some people accuse the pharmaceutical companies that the specification of drugs that are being sold in the industrialized nations, in the industrialized countries, are not the same, the component, they are not the same for those people who are using them in developing countries. Another thing which is of main concern for in the pharma industry, which is reverse engineering. Reverse engineering, which is the process of discovering the content or analyzing the content of a medicine to know how we can create generic version of this medicine in another name or another product, but we use the same specification of this product. The WTO agreement on intellectual property, TRIPS, they allow poor countries to produce generic products for local consumption or import them if they don't have the capacity to make generic products. However, in India, they have started doing generic products of medicine, and they are now producing their own medicine in this regard. The drug companies usually, from where do they get most of their money? From their profits mainly, and they take this money for research and development. Research and development concerning launching new drugs for new viruses such as the coronavirus. Now they are competing who will be the first to discover a drug or vaccine for the coronavirus, so that they can have so many profits, because it's a global crisis, it's a global virus, and it affected most of the countries of the world. They use the money because they consider that developing drug is very costly. So developing drugs is in the developed world is very costly, but in developing countries, developing drugs is not that much costly, because they have their own components which they can rely on, especially that in India, for instance, they are trying, as I said, they are generating drugs in a new manner, and they are developing new drugs which is acceptable by their government. Multinational corporations, they are very much concerned in applying certain laws concerning their ethical conduct regarding certain conditions. In addition, the governments all over the world, or anywhere they are operating, the governments, they are very concerned about the ethical conduct of those companies whenever they are concerning these conditions. They include, first, labor issues. Labor issues concerning the wages of labor, child labor, the working conditions of the labor, working hours, and freedom of association. So let us look at each item in detail. Child labor, the International Labour Organization estimates that 250 million children aged 5 to 17 years, they work which is unacceptable, which is illegal, because child labor is prohibited all over the world, because those children, they need to be at school, they don't need to be in factories. So some of those companies, global companies, they try to avoid have children working in their companies or their factories, such as IKEA. They show that we don't hire children. On contrary, we help those children to go to school, and we help their families so that they can gain good reputation in the countries they are operating or they are selling their products. So in addition, some companies, to save their reputation, they refuse to let people work extra hours or for long hours. Why? Because this is against the law and this is not acceptable. So they might be accused of exploitation of labor and mistreatment. The United Global Compact, they established a corporate code of ethics. As we know, the code of ethics is something which say what is acceptable, what is unacceptable in certain conduct or certain company. So the UN Global Compact established guidelines for acceptable behavior in human rights concerning labor, the environment, and anti-corruption. As we said, the corruption is a dilemma that invading most of the countries of the world, and they are trying to find a way to limit corruption anywhere that is being shown. Okay, how we can motivate companies to be to know their responsibility in the societies that they are operating. For instance, if they are being or prove that they are acting irresponsible in certain manners or unethically in certain situations, they will result in certain outcomes which are not being good for the company, such as legal sanctions. They will be forbidden from operating. Consumer boycotts. Usually the consumers, they don't like such behaviors. Lower employee morale. Cost sales because of bad publicity, and which will force them to set a code of conduct which is a set of global policy that must be fulfilled and obeyed. It's very important that as long as they set this code of conduct, they should communicate this conduct to the employees, to the suppliers, and to the subcontractors. They must also ensure that policies are carried out, and this will result in the knowledge of stakeholders of the action of the company and to be monitored by the stakeholders at large. Corporate ethics in the future. If we can judge corporate ethics in the future, we have two trends. Those two trends means that there will be great convergence of proper ethical conduct all over the world. The other one argue that individuals will develop skills to address ethical issues. The impact of social media is so huge. As you can see, social media connect people together most of the time, and they get together, they communicate, they collaborate on solving so many problems that they share. The impact of future business and government leaders is very important. For instance, now the coronavirus is calling most of the global leaders to communicate so that and collaborate to find a solution and a cure for the coronavirus, so that it will save the people and it will save the globe in general. So we come to the end of chapter 11. This is the end for this week, and we will meet next week inshallah to talk about another topic according to our syllabus in international business. See you then. Bye bye.